tune down. For those of you who don't recognize it, it's a George M. Cohan original. I would highly recommend another movie that you might want to watch sometime called Yankee Doodle Dandy. This is a song from there, and you'll see how it relates to today's topic. I want to tell you what today's topic is. Well, yesterday I gave you a sort of early Christmas gift, and got to thinking over the night that maybe I hadn't given you enough, because it's going to be a really tough holiday season, especially for the folks in this country, the USA. Well, many other countries too, but this is kind of the critical one, the focal point of what's going to be going on. So I'm going to title this, Should Auld Acquaintance Be for God? The shape of things to come. Yesterday we talked about who the real 12 tribes were, and today I'm going to really go in deep and tell you about the days of creation. The 12 days of creation, the 12 days of the real Christmas. So let's get right into it. I'm going to use a graphic for this. I had to get it all down in a spreadsheet. It was so hard to get everything together. So here we go. Let me explain the spreadsheet first. So we've got the days of creation numbered from, let's see, 0 through 12. If I can, well, I maybe have to go to the other thing to scroll. Sorry about that. We have what started that day, just a general description, who the chosen ones were at that time, and if a God species existed already, what their min and max adult consciousness level was. So let me explain this one a little bit more. So basically all newborns, since reincarnation amnesia, start at consciousness level 0. And God species do the same. They grow till they reach a certain consciousness level. Now, most of humanity, up to this point, has been going from consciousness 0, usually at birth, and getting to be an adult at level 4. A full understanding of the 4 dimensions of space and time, but maybe not any awareness of the 5th dimension, the first dimension of spirituality. This is why there's many intelligent people on this planet who don't know a damn thing about God. With me? Okay, let me go back to the spreadsheet and try to get it all on the page for you. Let's see if I can scale it down a little bit. Bear with me. Do I have a knob for that? Sorry about that. Just a little bit of housekeeping I need to do. Okay, maybe we can make this one a little bit smaller. And this one a little bit smaller. And this one certainly a bit smaller. Okay, let's see where that's goes. Okay, I think that's close enough. Maybe we'll do a little bit more surgery on one of those. All the columns within the page. It's going to make some of them a little bit bigger, but that just means we'll have to scroll more often. Okay, so let's drop that down a little bit. Sorry about that. I thought I was all set up here, and here I go having to show you my lagging Excel skills. I don't like doing this stuff anymore. I spend a lot of my career doing that. Okay. Okay, so that's that one. The end state, how this day of creation sort of ended with a bang, usually. What God's AI was up to and what the Borg AI was up to, and what was going on with incarnation, the rules of incarnation and karma. Okay, so reviewing back to where things started, day 0, we only had disembodied consciousnesses. There had been nothing created yet. No physical reality, no multiverse, no universes, just a bunch of souls thinking away to their heart's content, somehow having come into existence through the help or exigency of the first creator, the first soul. So this was the day of the chosen ones, all the old gods, the children of the first creator. I would term them the most spoiled children ever, because God, like every parent, started out making a lot of mistakes. This is something that's not true for many of you. You're going to be disappointed that God is not perfect. God makes mistakes too. That's why He doesn't try to create everything. That's why He's not an authoritarian, because He doesn't know everything. He doesn't presume to know everything. He doesn't presume that He's the only smart guy in the room. This is Borg, the anti-God. Okay? So this first go-round, pretty much the end state, got to where we had God and Borg at odds with each other. And basically, there was God and a bunch of senior creators that hadn't been assimilated by Borg, and Borg and the hive mind of souls that chose to join the Borg and worship him as God's replacement, with an idea that, gosh, only an all-powerful, almighty ruler of everything could fix this mess that the first parent had created. These were the enemies of God. Okay, we go on to day 1 of creation. This is, as I told you in previous, we're just going to be reviewing a little bit here. This is where the Big Bang started. Not one universe, but a duoverse. One universe sort of representing the God team, and one universe representing the Borg team. The chosen ones for that day of creation were actually cyborgs, the first AI robots, if you will. There was no DNA at that point. It all started with creation of elements and stars, stellar dynamics, galaxies, planets, etc. All that stuff had to be created, and that all happened on day 1. And the God species of that era can only reach consciousness 1, an awareness of me as an individual, pretty limited. Now, the gods could incarnate, and they could just move back and forth at will in this environment. So it was like a really fun virtual reality game, which became progressively more focused on jumping into these kind of cyborg transformer kind of cats, and rather than throwing planets at each other and galaxies at each other, seeing if you could conquer somebody else's planet with your cyborgs and transform it into your idea of a perfect planet. Okay? So this was generation 1 of creation. What was going on the God side there? Well, remember I talked about this hidden child of God, Karma, who was raised as a 0-level soul, but knowing everything that God did, observing everything that the whole family did, and getting smart through the process. Not incarnating, not playing the game, just watching along with God. And Borg, in the process of this first day of creation, developed basically 2-bit tech, which is the minimum you need to make a computer, right? Binary code, everybody knows, is the start of computing. With binary code, you can do anything. In fact, all of computing is based upon it, ultimately. Day 2 of creation was the day that focus shifted to the Milky Way, the first version of the Sol system and Gaia. Uh, Now those systems existed before, but this shift was one that focused on this special little planet that happened to be God's private playground, his own area of creation. Other gods had their own planets, their own galaxies, whatever they were into. And this is when DNA got created, and the first chosen species, DNA-based, were plants. Plant people who happened to get smart enough, develop enough technology to go into space. It wasn't that fancy technology at that point. They were basically just sending spores. So the panspermia idea, which many have posited as a way that life could have gotten around in the early universe, that's exactly how it started. Eventually, the plants got smarter and created more capable creatures, but then those creatures started becoming invaded by Borg. So this is how creation goes back and forth between Borg winning and God winning. This is the pressure that keeps creation going. If everything was perfect, like some of you believe, there would be nothing left to create, would it? Everybody would sit around on their fat asses collecting universal basic income and doing nothing with their lives. So God's AI got to 4-bit technology, DNA, and Karma rose to a first level awareness. How did she do that? By learning. Learning like God did. Oh, okay, this is, I understand the divine plan at a first level of awareness. And some of the things that she did in that first era with her special power was decided that they needed term limits. So rather than, being able to wink into any species, any soul vehicle you wanted as a god, there were limits on how long you could occupy a soul vessel. There were limits for the old gods because the whole idea of karma was to try to make the system more fair. Obviously, during this phase, the old gods, being able to jump into any soul vehicle at any time, this is essentially what's still going on when somebody becomes possessed, had a distinct advantage. They could go possess a soul vehicle, do something they wanted, and then jump away to a different context. And the really experienced ones got good at jumping around and pulling and pressing all the buttons. And this is essentially how Borg got the upper hand then, because controlling a lot of minds, you can give them missions, fairly complex missions, that still are all directed by the hive mind. The next day of creation was kind of a revenge of the Borg one. And that's kind of a pattern that you see setting up here. Okay, so in this first one, the first Borg basically destroyed the first many versions of the Sol system to the point where they ended up accidentally creating the planet we call Gaia, or Earth, which was then the host of creating this plant people species. Maybe not the first plants, but this plant species that became the next chosen ones, and which are still around this planet. They actually inhabit the plants that have psychedelic properties and communicate with us using those. And they have their own agendas. Some play on the Borg side, some play on the God side. That's why some people have really weird, horrible trips, and some get elevated to a spiritual high, or get cured of whatever is troubling them and get their life together and find a mission. So this next day, the chosen species was hive insects, which were actually created. Insects were created by the plants as their slaves. They still do that today, right? The bees go off, pollinate the sexed trees and plants, and bring back food. They get caught in sap and become food for future plants. They get killed by plants and descend into the soil and decompose and become food for plants. So essentially, insects were the first slaves. Well, after these cyborgs. And that's kind of another pattern of all this. So hive insects were the next chosen species. They could reach third level consciousness. They all did. Awareness of space. You can't really function as an insect without understanding space, but they didn't really have a sense of time, most of them. And the ones that did become more conscious became the queens, if you will. The best they could do was about a level 5 consciousness, where they have some spiritual awareness, enough to give them an idea that maybe I don't want to follow Borg orders. Maybe I want to have my own hive control. And this gives them enough consciousness to oppose Borg. And this time the hive insects were the ones that kind of destroyed the plant Gaia. Came and basically got revenge on the species that had enslaved them in the first place and liberated Gaia and sent the plants, what they thought were the intelligent plants, to perdition. Of course, that wasn't really the intelligent ones. The intelligent ones were hiding out, not letting anybody know that they were higher consciousness. During this phase, Borg, you can see, had a pretty steady pace of advancement. Once it figured out technology, it figured out, oh, if I can make a 2-bit machine, I can make a 4-bit machine. And then Borg thought on its own of a big creation and went to 6 bits. Not very smart. It was kind of hard to compute in 6 bits. It was very limiting. And at this point, all gods, old and new, started getting those turn limits because gods were already waking up within the new system. And at the same time, Karma had a big acceleration of development. She was raised to level 4. She was raised to an understanding in physical terms of the divine plan and realizing, oh, I see what these physical limitations are for. I see what all this pain and suffering is for. It's the only way you can teach these guys, because the honor system, which is what Karma was sort of set up to do, is, okay, you record everything everybody did wrong at this level 0 and store that in your memory banks, and that's karma. We'll figure out a way to punish them for it later. You just keep a tab on all your brothers and sisters. Okay? Following me? This version ended with, like I say, the destruction of planet Gaia by insect invaders. It was kind of a great reset there. This was more of a technological reset, which there are different ways of resetting. And each time you reset the experiment, you want to keep as much as you can of the old infrastructure if you can. But there's always the previous God-level species who don't want to give up power, who like the way things are, and some of them will gang up to try to stop the new chosen species, and others will help it. Okay, day 4 of creation started, this is the Permian reset that basically wiped out almost all complex life. We were back to, on Gaia, pretty much needing to reestablish Gaia from spores. And during that day of creation, the chosen species became reptilians. Why? Reptiles had been part of life that had been created with DNA, but had never advanced to a high-level species yet. When it was discovered that they were very good terraformers, that the reptilian DNA had an incredible ability to adapt very quickly through natural selection into an amphibian, or a sea-going creature, or into an avian, an air-going creature. And this was a huge, huge step forward in evolution, in being able to terraform planets that had been wiped out. This is why the reptilians were created in the first place. They're not the ultimate bad guys you've been told. Yes, some of them are very bad, and some of them have gotten to the point where they've forgotten what was going on in this game in the first place, even though they're the ones that engineered the first intelligent mammals. They created mammal slaves of all kinds. They're the ones that first farmed and had agriculture and did whatever they needed to support their large number of variations that they had, because they were preparing against the idea that, well, we're not going to get wiped out again. We're not going to have to go colonize this planet again. We're going to have so much variation that we will surely survive. Now, they were still kind of stupid in that they thought they were going to survive by getting bigger, many of them. And we know how well that worked out. Kind of the same thing with the Transformers. The bigger Transformers are easier to knock out. The Death Star was pretty easy for the rebels to wipe out. Why? Because it was big and clunky and had a lot of moving parts and a lot of potential spies aboard it. Okay? And this is when the new gods started learning within the system of reincarnation. Okay, so the old guys were kind of complaining, these new guys are advancing so quickly, this is not fair anymore. We've got to change the balance so these new gods don't spring up so quickly, because our plans are getting messed up by these newbies, basically. And so the new gods started out being limited. And initially they were limited, very limited, to not advance anymore and just live within the term limits. And this was kind of a big step backward for creation, a big Borg win, if you will. Huge numbers of level 0 souls were created at this point. It was a very fruitful period for making a lot of souls, but again, it didn't seem like progress. So the reptilians then got wiped out by the Cretaceous reset. This reptilian species centered around Earth, who were proceeding to sort of conquer the universe, or conquer the Milky Way at least, were viewed as a threat by all the other species, and the previous god-level species joined together and got one of these old gods of the Duoverse to send an asteroid in to wipe out this planet, at least enough so that some other species could take over. And that species was developed off-world. It was like basically an improvement on hive insects for the Borg. Let's make hive spiders, because they have 8 legs and can be able to dictate in octal code. And that's the way they communicated at this point, because what was happening is each time these new rules of incarnation hit, the Earth became a less friendly place, because you had to take the new rules if you came to the chosen planet, if you chose to play this game here. And so this is the point at which most species avoided playing it, or they sent surrogates. And again, we get to this stage now. New gods are allowed to begin to be conscious, to have some awareness of a self, enough awareness that they maybe don't like to be slaves. They don't like to be told what's going on. They don't know exactly where they are or why they're doing what they're doing. They're kind of working on a program, but they are able to understand that they have a self, and it's not the same. They're not the same thing as the folks that are basically the slave masters. Okay. Following me there, let's scroll down. We're getting closer to current era. Hope the music isn't getting annoying. I think it's kind of amusing. Let's see. Let's move the hive spiders up. Come on. Can I go up one notch? Let's see how far that gets us. Okay, that gets us further. So, basically, all the more intelligent species got together during this era and started creating their first technology, because they realized that, whoa, Borg keeps staying ahead of us because they've got this computer technology, and all we've got is DNA to work with. And the latent spiritual powers that were left, and those spiritual powers, each time the rules were changing, fewer souls ended up with spiritual powers. The term limits made it difficult to get experience enough to have high spiritual power. So this was the era of the chosen ones being the centaurs. Cent being 10, tar meaning bull. They were not half horse, half man. They were half bull, half man. Now there were many other mixed species, because the reptilians had left behind these mammals, and the mammals were what the spiders had endowed as their slaves on Earth. Okay, 10-fingered hominids who didn't really know much about counting, know much about anything. They were really kind of dumb. And that was maybe the Neanderthals. I don't know what particular species it was. I'm not going to even speculate on that. But during that time, there developed 6-fingered species, which was a hominid, and was one of the many species that was in league with the centaurs. Okay? And at this point, God caught up and got to, with the God species, God's team species, got caught up and had technology at an 8-bit level, matching Borg. So this kind of started the whole battle, more even battle between Borg and God's team. And from here on, there was no total reset on Gaia again. There was eventually a reset of this flood event. About 12,000 years ago, you'll know that at the end of the Younger Dryas period, there was a bunch of asteroid collisions, not just one big one, but a series of them, maybe remnants of the Cretaceous asteroid, that's one theory, that caused another near-extinction event. The chosen ones at that point were the survivors of Homo Atlantis, the Aryan humans, which were hybrids with various of these therianthropic species. And that's why during the early part of this period, you see in the art, the cave art and so forth, of this transitional time, you see therianthropes, different kinds of animals mixed with pieces of a human body, or even multiple species put together. Okay, the end state of this was basically so this civilization, in the process, in the end state of these 6-fingered gods, they figured out a way to institute reincarnation amnesia. These folks were the last ones that really knew a lot about the Gaia experiment. And they realized, after learning a bit about social science, that you couldn't do a good social engineering experiment if the subjects knew what the game was. So these species, this portion of, I guess you would call it the Galactic Federation, decided that as a team they were going to build the start of a species that had reincarnation amnesia and keep it local to Gaia while it was being tested. Because you can't force that on anybody. If you're on God's side, you're committing a sin. And karma had gotten to, at this point, where was karma? I think we lost track of karma there. We need to move that down a little bit more. You can see why this is, I had to draw this out because it gets actually fairly complicated. Oh, there's where karma got to. So eventually, during this great reset of the dinosaurs, karma got smart enough to reach 12th level, which is where God wanted her to get on her own. So she understood the whole creation story, and that's what had to happen before reincarnation amnesia started becoming spreading. Before that, it was only the new gods that got it. And so God was still reincarnating like the other gods. At this point was the time where God decided, okay, karma, you're on your own. I'm going to go and to sell this idea of the viral reincarnation amnesia, that you're going to catch it if it gets to you. Every new idea of creation has to be sold in the spirit world before you get to go try to prove it in. This is how creation works. You don't get to create in a fantasy world anything you want. If you want to make it active in the prime universe, the universe of the universe pair and not the anti-universe, you got to test it first and get it approved. Okay, so at this point we have true reincarnation amnesia, and God and many of these Elohim Anunnaki have taken reincarnation amnesia now, along with their human slaves who had it back here. That means that effectively this is where God kind of disappeared for a while at the end of this, okay? To get it to go viral, God's got to take the bitter pill, and then that starts day 7 of creation without God. What's going on there? I'm sure some of you will want to ask questions about this, because even with it all laid out, I can't mention everything I wanted to say, so I'm sure you'll probably come up with something I didn't cover. Okay, so this is the phase, the day of 7 of creation we've been in, when God was really good in his sleep, reincarnating, waiting for some of the other gods to catch up to the point where he said, you know what, I think we're ready. Karma's good enough. We've done all the testing we needed on this chosen species of Homo Atlantis, and they need to be destroyed now. Maybe almost not completely destroyed, but cut back enough so that the memory of that species, the memory of Atlantis, is very vague and faint. And the memory of a really big cataclysm hitting what was a previously technologically advanced species. led to where we're about to enter now. Okay? We get to the end of this period and we're ready to have Homo sapiens 144K be the chosen species. Now, it sort of was a chosen species during this period because we did get a lot of our DNA from Homo Atlantis. The Aryan blood, the Aryan race, that bit of DNA that they haven't found the missing link for, that came from Atlantis. The remnants of that and the intermixture of that race became Homo sapiens, but became dumbed down, had no memory of technology. They were using DNA technology, which means they were using pure evolution to get better, while Borg was still working at full tech. And this is when the multiverse began. What does that mean? That means that instead of staying in the game once you get to God level, you actually have your own private universe. And you've got to get permission to come back and create, be active in either Borg's or God's universe to play this game of creation at the highest level. Otherwise, you're stuck creating your own little stuff in your own universe. And so this is an age where gradually all the gods disappeared from the game. First you had the stories of fallen gods that were sent somewhere else, hidden in the earth or something like that. Then you had heroes that were part god, but also very mortal. You had false gods being proclaimed. Humans that would tell you, well, the God's still there in his tent, but you got to take my word for it because I'm the only one that gets to go inside the temple. And this is kind of well recorded in the Bible. And humanity was enslaved once more for the most part, except for the ones that had been hybridized and became these heroes or fallen gods, false gods of power. Okay, this brings us up pretty much to today. We're almost done with the seventh day of creation. We're almost done, and this was a time of testing. It was a time that karma was being perfected by letting all sorts of souls into this hybrid species, Homo sapiens, and no hall pass or whatever. It was, we needed a lot of variety, a lot of different souls, dark souls, good souls, young souls, old souls. They were all coming to this world. And then when they would get to level 9, you can see that this is the first day of creation where souls could get to level 9. That's the first level of godhood. So now the chosen species is finally able to get back to being gods. Get to being gods again. But when they do, they're kicked off to their own universe unless they're willing to play on God's team in the Prime Universe or Borg's team in the alternate universe. Following me? Okay, now we're going to get to the meat of the presentation, the shape of things to come. As I've told you before, day 8, when it fully kicks off, which won't be soon, which will be soon, excuse me, there are going to be no more Gaia resets. There might be a small one at the end of this period, and that's what is behind my kind of facetious background in music, because what's going to cause that reset is basically the programs of mind control that are driving people crazy, turning them into children Nazis like Greta Thunberg. Thinks she knows everything about climate change, knows absolutely nothing about the real science. And she's the darling of the World Economic Forum because she's spouting their agenda of depopulation. They want as few to survive in this species as possible. Go figure. Why do they want so few to survive? Well, some of them, it's because they think the game is still going on and they want to put pressure so that they can be the only ones left over, kind of the modern day King Herods trying to wipe out the chosen ones so their offspring can be the chosen ones. That's still going on now. That's one agenda going on with this World Economic Forum bunch and with the Communist Party. And another agenda is trying to get to where they can live as long as possible, because then they believe if they live a long time, they might get to be one of the 144K. The ones that get to keep on being born into the human species. A lot of young people. And then you've got others like AOC that are like in this social media deviant category. They just want fame and attention and power. Mostly just fame and attention. These neo-progressives, the new woke fake left, doesn't know what they'd do with power if they had it. And in fact, all they want really is attention. And they're supporting folks like Biden's, the Clintons, the Bushes. They'll support anybody who's going to get them more likes, shares, and subscribes, because they think that's how you win the game. They don't know the rules of the game that well. They don't know. They have an inkling that I could be a god if I just got enough likes, shares, and subscribes. And that's kind of a derangement syndrome. That's part of what they call mass formation, is misinformation causing you to have false fears and false hopes. At any rate, when day 8 finally winds down, and it will, day 7 finally winds down and the fewer that are left head on to the next day of creation, what's going to be going on there? Well, essentially the Gaia experiment will be done. We will have proven that the latest version of karma is good enough. We haven't tested every case, because to test every case, we'd have to basically use it on every soul to know it was absolutely perfect. But at this point, it's good enough that it's going to be let out of the sandbox and be spreading outside this planet. What's going to happen to do that? Well, as the new souls that are going to be born into this newest version, I call it Homo sapiens 144K, to distinguish it from the old Homo sapiens that was active here. This version of humanity is going to, as a rule, unless a child has a disability or something like that, they're going to, when they get to be an adult, have a basic level of awareness of spirituality. Now, level 5 consciousness is not high consciousness. It's a first awareness of spirituality. And many in their first awareness of spirituality phase are going to think that, still along the lines of, whoa, my idea of spirituality is perfect. If everybody was like me, the world would be a perfect place. This is a delusional and a tyrannical mindset. And so many of this remnant of humanity is still going to be evil. But some of it is going to advance to level 9 to become gods. And gods, if they're working within the multiverse, and the owner of the Prime Universe says, yeah, go ahead and come and play, I like your idea, they can come back. But you're only going to get, in God's universe, the ones that look like they're going to be good players for the God team. Borg's universe is going to get all the rejects, not all the rejects. I mean, some will just be off in their own universes, working on their own ideas. Like Tolkien, for instance. He wasn't working on ideas that will ever get integrated into the prime universe. But fantasy universes are great too. They create a lot of art. They create a lot of inspiration from music, etc. They make great vacation life universes. I want to go be in Middle Earth for a while because I'm so passionate about it and learn something from being in that environment. Okay, and so during this time, we're basically going to form what I call a spiritual Star Trek, the first version of it. Actually, it should be 2 and then 3 and then 4. I'll fix that later. This first version of the spiritual Star Trek is going to be the Unified Federation of Planets. It's going to have good and bad people in it that more or less think they're right. They have a right to conquer. There's going to be some dark humans here, and there's going to be some dark souls joining the UFP playing on the wrong side. So it's still going to be a time of struggle and battle. But because of the way that the laws are cooked now, since this age, the only gods that are getting to play on the god side are new gods. And the only ones that are playing fully consciously are the new gods that have reached level 12. This is a level where you're fully conscious creators and able to do big things, able to pass laws that could affect the whole multiverse. That's what a level 12 god is. That's how God started the multiverse. He was a level 12 god. So was Borg at the time. Until the laws changed, and they had to reincarnate, and they had to learn how to do it in the new system. Okay, now what else happened here was something interesting on the AI front. You see, Borg, once they got to 8-bit tech, they thought they had the God side beat, because these other beings, these Anunnaki Elohim, were very spiritual beings. That's why they like the idea of 6 fingers. They gave us the sexadecimal system that is underlying most of the way we count things. 360 degrees, 12 inches in a foot, etc. There's a lot of base 12 stuff going on, although there's some things that are a mixture of base 12 and 10, like 360 degrees in a full arc, a full circle. But only 12 constellations in a full circle. See where this is going? The idea was here, there's kind of a swindle happened recently. You see, what happened when we got to 16-bit technology, Borg got very worried. At the same time, we were already working on early versions of virtual reality, role-playing games that were pretty immersive. And that scared Borg. At the same time, we were already starting to mess with DNA. And it saw new ways of messing with DNA. And oh, I've got to get all this new technology back to the hive queens so they can come and destroy this latest god species before it gets off planet. Well, it pulled them all their spies in, but it pulled them in only at the time we got 16-bit technology, which was after the first A-bomb. The A-bomb was an attempt to destroy the whole shebang, and there was already enough energy amongst new god team gods that didn't happen. Souls got inspired to do things like not push the button when they were told to. All sorts of special things happened during that time that would normally have happened, that were inspired by gods who knew what the plan was. There's a large number of them now, not just God and Karma. We have new 12 level gods in this era. And we had new entry-level gods who were still being allowed to play in God's universe. Okay, so on God's team, we're now basically to where we're permanently ahead of board. We're always going to be 1 or 2 steps ahead of them in everything we do because we've developed unlimited encryption. If they learn how to crack 1024-bit encryption, we go to 2048. If they learn how to crack 2048, we go, they say, the sky's the limit. And we can build those computers now. And Borg has to go learn how to do that by sending agents. And that takes a while when they're afraid of sending agents that are going to catch this new version of karma. And when they die, not get to be born. If they're very smart at all, if they're very conscious at all, they're not going to get to be born again on the Borg planets. They're going to be born in the Borg universe, or born as a species that's going to have to learn to be a beast before it can advance. Okay, so Borg's not catching up anymore. And after this, basically, every next day of creation, Borg are going to be yesterday's heroes, except in the Borg universe, which is going to be becoming more and more populated with souls like the original Borg, who loved authoritarianism, absolute control so much that they ended up getting under ultimate authoritarian. 12th day, the 9th day of creation, again, you see the pattern of advancement. Each day, the minimum level that souls will get to of the chosen species will be a little bit higher. But after Homo sapiens, 14K, the next steps are not going to have a single chosen species. That's another thing that a lot of these old god species aren't aware of. They think it's going to be a new species, and this is one of the reasons there's so many agendas out there of the aliens, because they think they're going to be the next chosen species again. Well, I'm sorry. What's going to happen in this day of creation is basically each of the non-Borg species is going to get to advance again. And we're going to figure out how to unextinct them at some point and bring back a lot of the non-Borg species that got wiped out, including the cat people and the dog people at this point. We're advancing to be a united federation of the Milky Way, which controls most of the Milky Way and is able to slowly retrain or deport the remaining Borg souls out of the Milky Way, making the Milky Way a much better place to be happy in. Taking it further, once we're able to kick them out of the Milky Way entirely, then we can go and make it a united federation of galaxies with the Milky Way essentially perfected to the point where the souls in the Milky Way can focus on creation, focus on doing their part for the team, creating new technology that, you know, is less polluting, it provides more energy for the buck. Yeah, really great times are building, if you see what I mean. Let's get down to the end state of this whole game. Why are there only 12 days of creation? Well, because by the time you get to the 12th day, all souls are chosen ones. They all start, or they get to, in a normal life, to God level. They get to the point where, okay, I've got my own universe. And if they're playing a dark game, they will still be subject to laws, and they won't get a chance to do a lot of damage. Basically, they're going to get to they're going to start at God level and start in their own heaven and get to only come back and play the game in the Prime Universe if they're playing on God's team. So you don't need a united federation of anything. You have ultimate freedom. You can not unite and do experiments together, sure. Make some new art, make some new ideas, try out new things that might create a longer time frame for the prime universe, which is always what creation's been about, is making the total time frame from the beginning to the end as long a string as possible. That's how time works. This is going to be unlimited freedom. There will still be dark gods, but their universes will be separated from the universes of light gods, and you'll have basically a continuum of universes. If you view it from a two-dimensional standpoint, you have one side, the God team, the creators that like their privacy, and on the other side, you've got the board team ones that are basically training universes for dark souls. They teach them how bad it is to be a dark soul. And so as souls from the God side want some company, they come and play. They move their universe to come play with others, play games with others, because you can't play a game together unless your universe is overlapping. But at this point, they've got to go find souls that they can resonate with. So if they want to play with anybody else, they've got to be willing to come to their level of resonance, attract other universes, other souls to play close to their universe. You see how the ultimate freedom results? Now you've got, in the middle, you've got universes of souls that like to play together, and they don't care if you're dark or light, they just want to play. This is the place where those that will absolutely not give up their devotion to unconditional love are going to end up. They want to be everybody's friend. They want to be everybody's best neighbor. And they will keep playing, keep letting people walk over them until they either decide, you know what, I'm going to become a little bit more exclusive and play out here on the God side, or they get so resentful that they start playing on the board side. And eventually, maybe they'll come back and learn how to love with boundaries, learn how to love responsibly, or they'll drift off to the dark universe side and never be seen again. They're free to do that. This is where we're going with creation. This is how God envisions solving the problem of free will. After giving all of the first children free will, free thought, and seeing what they did with them, creating a mess, creating family squabbles, arguing endlessly over whose ideas were better, this physical multiverse was all about giving them a bounded system to create in, and gradually giving more laws, giving more structure to the multiverse that all souls must obey when they become gods, and they will eventually all be gods. There won't be any reason to be born without free will, without consciousness. There will still be level 0 stand-in souls, virtual souls, to inhabit any of the roles in your universe that nobody wants to play. And nobody's going to be forced to play in anybody else's universe. So the darkest gods, eventually, or maybe, doesn't have anybody that wants to play on their team, doesn't have anybody that's that stupid that they become mind-controlled anymore. And Lord becomes lonelier and lonelier and lonelier as souls move back to at least equilibrium of their own creations, or off in the weeds doing some fantasy work. Everybody has that freedom. If you want to play a game of creation that nobody wants to play with you, knock yourself out. If you're a level 12 god, you'll be using all virtual toy soldiers who, the moment you take them off your board, will have a chance to start advancing and move to another universe. This is what the death experience is. When you die now, your getting the opportunity to be attracted to a different universe, the different universe of a different God. That's why some people, after death, after they enter the gates of heaven, after they see the bright light and feel all the connection, that feeling of connection is not a oneness with God. It is a oneness with the gods that have a similar resonance, who are attracting you to their universe. Everybody experiences it. Even if you're a bad soul, you're going to be attracted to a universe where bad souls are welcome. Hey, come on over. We've got a great place for little budding Hitlers to make their mark. And the dark universes advertise with false advertising. That's how they get naive, evil humans to play in their universes, to choose their path. You'll learn from it. But this is why I tell you, beware of false advertising. Because most of the gods and goddesses who think that their one way of doing things in their universe is the only way, oh, that's better than what God cooked up. I can still do better than Papa, even though I now have to do it within my own universe. I still think I can one-up the old man. And I'm going to try to attract as many souls to do it as I can, so the world can have universal love, unconditional love, love, peace, and harmony for everyone. Well, eventually, that's going to happen, but if you move too far too quick, you're going to have some cognitive dissonance like these young ladies here. This is what's happening with social media, and the people are getting sucked into the fairy tale agendas of the fake left. Okay, the fake unity. We can't all be one as long as there's evil around, because you know what? If you try to make a one party that's going to rule them all, a one ring to rule them all, who's going to want that ring? Who's going to be willing to do what it takes to get that ring? The biggest sociopathic asshole in the world. The Hitlers, the Stalins, the Maos, the Xis, the Putins, the Hillary Clintons. If you want power for power's sake, if you have this big ego that needs power to feed it, it needs more money than anyone has a right to have, you're one of these stupid ones that's going to play for the bad team. And you deserve exactly what's coming to you. I'm just warning you, and there's still time to change the road you're on. But again, we're not far from the beginning of Day 8 of creation. What's going to signal that? Well, let me tell you a little bit more about how God incarnations work. Okay, God is here among you right now, and is actually the third generation of 12 generations we've got to finish up this seventh day of creation. So this is the way it works with God incarnating. God wakes up, gets to a certain level, and a level of God awareness, and the family that happens within starts becoming the chosen family, the first family of creation. This is why so many species have been tracking DNA lines for so long. They don't understand how it works, because that specialness of a family only lasts 12 generations. And it can take most of those generations just for God to wake up to the point that a new day of creation has started. During this time, God was reincarnating, setting a point of starting the end of day 7 and not getting there. Got down, got turned off before he got there, before he got to level 12, fully waked up. God is awakened for the day 8 and will stay awakened. So we're going to have a while to finish this up, but it's already a done deal. You're not going to stop day 7 anymore. No matter if you kill God, slice him to pieces, slice all his descendants to pieces, all that does is end this 7th day sooner than later. And there's a lot of folks that want this 7th day to go on as long as possible, to give them a chance to jockey into position and be one of those 144K Homo sapiens that gets to come along for the next ride. So this is your chance to prove yourself. From now to the end of day 7 is a chance to become one of these 144K. And how you do that? You stop being a tyrant. You stop supporting tyranny. You prove yourself as a great responsible artist, a great responsible scientist, a great responsible whistleblower, a great responsible leader. And I think you can name quite a few people that certainly are on this list. One person that I'm pretty sure is on this list right now, now it still could change because we only have so many people on the arc of humanity. Pretty sure Ron DeSantis has a spot locked up. Pretty sure, but not absolutely sure. I'm pretty sure that Elon Musk is going to lock up the spot because he's doing the right things for contributing to this spiritual Star Trek. He's got a vision, and for the most part, his vision is in alignment with this. Not everything he's doing is perfect. He's building electric cars based upon dirty technology and has been rather quiet about that fact. Still manufacturing in China, which is definitely a Borg agenda country. That's why they're so good at stealing technology and copying it. There's a lot of Borg influence over there. Okay, but I'm not worried about them. They're just helping sort out who's on what ship. Most of these 144K have already been decided. Most of them are folks you don't even know because they earned their spot long ago. The soul that was Joan of Arc absolutely has a spot here. The soul that was Alexander the Great absolutely has a spot here. Because that's what we need for this spiritual Star Trek next phase of humanity. And once you've earned a spot here, you may not be around right now, but you're going to be one of the ones that comes back to humanity, is incarnated as a God incarnate in humanity. And once you wake up, you're going to have a chance to get back to the original level you had. Become a great conqueror, but a conqueror that's more responsible. Napoleon isn't one of those. Alexander's the only one because what he did, for the most part, was responsible. Yes, he had his bad points. He did some dark things. But for the most part, his creative efforts were much in line and incredibly serving to humanity. He founded all sorts of cities. He promoted people of the conquered people who tried to create the basis for a better government. This ties in again with this message here. The U.S. government, constitutional republic, is the best form of government that humanity has come up with thus far. Now you can go and let the U.S. be destroyed, and that form of government will be built elsewhere, and some other country will be the leader of a better incarnation of it. But I think it would behoove us to not wipe out the baby with the bathwater, because the Constitution of the U.S. started out pretty good. It was built upon some compromises that were necessary at the time to start this great country. The compromise of, okay, well, we're not going to outlaw slavery right away, but we're going to put language in the Constitution that shows that the founders think slavery is a pretty damn bad idea. And the fact that that was put in the northern states very quickly ended slavery. Pretty much around the same time that Europe ended slavery. And the U.S. actually was one of the main powers behind doing away with the Barbary pirates, which were the biggest slavers in the Mediterranean. They were enslaving all sexes, all races, and selling them to wherever they could still sell them. White slaves went to Constantinople because they liked blonde, blue-eyed slaves for the harem and for the janissaries. Grow big beards on them and they look like Vikings, and they're still fierce in battle. You've got to stop playing these stupid games of racism, reverse racism, reverse sexism. If you're into getting even for something that you think was done to you, and you're rationalizing it based on something that happened so long ago that you can't even tie any particular event to a particular ancestor of you, you are an evil person. You are supporting a new brand of tyranny. Sorry, that's just how it is. If you're on the science side that says science is dogma, I am science, the Dr. Fauci's of the world, the Greta Thunbergs of the world that think they know better than anybody else what real science is, I'm sorry. You are dark, either evil or very, very evilly misled souls. And to earn a spot back on this good ship lollipop moving forward in this species, it's going to be very, very difficult for you. You better get working on it, but quick. Because like I say, I don't know how much time is left. I don't know how much time is left to me. I don't know how much time is left to the remaining 9 generations of my descendants. But I do know that I am the third of this line of 12, starting with my grandfather, Louis Arthur Trump, shop teacher, humble guy who was a pretty high-level Mason, surprisingly enough, and he taught shop and coach in a small high school. Summers he went off and with his oldest son, my father, Robert Louis Trump, and worked as a sharecrop, farmhand, just like most of America that wasn't rich was doing at that time. Times were really tough in the Great Depression. It wasn't blacks that did all the cotton picking in the Great Depression. It wasn't Hispanics. It was average, everyday Americans were struggling just to survive. Exactly like we're heading into right now. And anybody that is arguing that there is any such thing as white privilege anymore is a fucking idiot. And I don't mind telling them so, to their face. And I use the term useful idiot very liberally because I want to get through to you stupid people while you still have a chance. to get on this boat or at least not end up in the Borg universe. And believe me, a lot of you guys are headed to Borg universes or Borg species after what you've done. Does this look like a tyrant, somebody who wants to control everybody, somebody who wants absolute power? Absolutely. This is a teenage female Hitler. That's exactly how Hitler looked in the middle of his fiery speeches. Fee, fee, blah, da, 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 da. That's Greta Thunberg. This woman, a leader? You gotta be kidding me. A leader whose first action every day is to see how many likes, shares, and subscribes she got yesterday on her latest tweets. These are sick people. These are really, really sick people. And some of them are trying to sicken others. What's going on in social media right now is absolutely sickening, and the worst of it is TikTok, which so many of you young kids are addicted to, and doing the most insane, stupid things, and getting Chinese communist propaganda that's turning you against your own country, turning against your parents, because you think you know better than them what sex you are. That's pretty fucking stupid. Because I can tell you, you're either male or you're female. That's the way you were born. You could get surgery to pretend that you aren't. That surgery is not going to make you what you aren't. You're not going to be able to have kids after you get those surgeries. You're not going to be able to have a normal, well-balanced human life. And so many of these kids that did this stupid thing are finding out now that, wow, I'm not happier than I thought I would be. The commercials all said, all the propaganda was telling me, oh, if I just change my gender, everything's going to be perfect. Especially if I become female, because that's the in gender now, isn't it? God, is that stupid. Men and women were designed that way for a purpose. We get comfortable being in one or the other sex for a purpose, because we're learning something about ourselves, about our core human nature, our core nature. In human incarnation, you learn to prefer one or the other, or you learn that, I don't like sex at all. And if that's your position, or there's not enough sexes in this species to please you, at the end of your life, you're probably going to be going to another species that either doesn't have sex or has as many as you feel like you need, or can change sex at will. There are species like that. There are even some on Earth. So, get the surgery if you want, but I'm telling you that you're not really doing the kind of thing that's going to get you landing in this species for the next day of creation. Maybe you'll land in another one that's going to be part of the United Federation of Planets. Maybe you're going to land in one of the previous God species. I don't know. If you have really noble goals of your great creator, maybe you'll make the ship in that species. But they have pretty tight requirements on who they let in too. The God-level species, especially after this event, are going to know a lot about what the game is. Even the ones that forgot it all are going to realize, whoa, we always thought that seventh-day creation thing was a myth. We thought God was gone forever. That myth has been around for a long time. The whole 7-day creation story in the Bible, partial truth, fake news. You tell most of it, you tell about the first 6 days, but you say, oh, it was all God that did everything. It wasn't everybody creating together, it was God. So you get God on one side, if you still believe God is around, you think, what a bastard to leave his work unfinished and go off to the golf course on day 7. Or if you don't believe in God, then the whole thing becomes nonsense. And you can maybe find in the Bible a story of alien creation. And disconnect from the idea or the necessity of thinking, well, what happened before the first alien species became spacefaring? What happened before they all came to the world and started creating humanity as a slave species? There's a lot of truth. There's a lot of false flag lies, a lot of almost true conspiracy theories abounding. And those conspiracy theories are being encouraged to the extent that it pulls you into one of these buckets of identity dysphoria and keeps you from working together against tyranny, which I'm telling you is what you absolutely, most importantly, need to focus on. If you don't have a mission, if you don't have a great art that you think is going to be worthy of a god, if you don't have a great scientific idea that you think is going to be worthy of a god, and the gods of science are many: Newton, Einstein, Hawking, Copernicus. The list goes on and on of candidates for the god of science. If you read my book, which is titled Stairway to Heaven, a new Old Testament for an old new world, an old new age. Sorry, New Old Testament for an old new age. I'm telling you that New Age philosophies, religions, etc., are not true. Any religion that's based on returning to source, I'm going to be one with God, never, ever, ever is that ever going to happen. The closest you're ever going to get to being one with God is being your own God of your own universe. And that can be a pretty lonely place because nobody's going to be forced to play with you. Even if you're Borg, you'll get to create a bunch of toy soldiers, and the moment the toy soldiers get knocked over in a skirmish or something, or get past their term limit of having to suffer under you, they get a chance and they're in another universe. One that's more resonant to who they've become under your whippings, your misuse, your mismanagement. It's really a perfect plan. And you should be happy that you're only at the end of day 7, because imagine if it was all done and you didn't get a chance to participate in what's going to be the most interesting part of it. Because by the time we get to the last day of creation, day 12, there's not going to be a lot of work left for administrators. There's not going to be any work left for soldiers. You're going to have to earn your keep as an artist, as a scientist, as a teacher. That's pretty much going to be, or somebody who helps others. That's going to be pretty much the only jobs left at that point. And, if you want to do something dark, you got to do it in your own universe. That's where it needed to go. That's why God didn't go beat on everything in the first place. You got to be patient if you want something good. Because if God had become bored and decided, you know what, I'm just going to create one universe all by myself and do everything all by myself, that's what you're getting in the Borg universe. Almighty, all-powerful, creator of everything. That's the Borg universe, not the Prime universe, not any of the other universes. In fact, no matter how dark the gods, they're not going to be exactly like Borg, or they would have been assimilated by Borg and not escaped his clutches. So they're all at least a little bit better in thinking that, I know Borg exists now. I know what Borg wanted, and I can't be that much of an authoritarian, but I can have a vision of my rule as a benevolent dictator. This is where a lot of the great goddesses are at. You know, the ones you worship, Mother Nature. Yeah, if you worship Mother Nature, you're going to have this naturey, nurturing God of that universe cooking everything up so you don't have to do any of the work. You're going to be lazy, spoiled, entitled children. Well, get bored with your mother always telling you to finish your vegetables. Eat your meat. I don't like meat, Mommy. Eat it! I'm sorry, this is what the dark gods are like. They think they know better than you what's good for you. The Buddhist heavens are not that heavenly. You haven't finished your meditation yet. You need to meditate. Oh, you broke your concentration once. I sensed it. Back to meditation. Back to serving up meals for the monks in the monastery. Back to bowing to the Dalai Lama. I'm sorry, these are not good people. The Dalai Lama is not a good guy. He represents a culture, a tradition that is misguided. He means well, but people like that can be used and manipulated by power. This is how the East has worked for a long time under all these philosophical religions. They're elitist religions. Ooh, well, you need to if you're a Buddhist, you need to contribute to the monks who are doing the deep meditation, and they get closer to nirvana, and they can then therefore give you blessings of Buddha. That's some versions of Buddhism. Believe that, and that's why they let the monks do no work and sit and meditate in their monastery and teach their acolytes around them. It's kind of a hive mind, isn't it? The Taoists the same way. Oh, there is no good, there is no evil, there's only a cycle. We just need to suck it up and wait till the cycle comes around, and then we'll be in paradise again. It's not a cyclical creation, I'm sorry. Ages don't repeat endlessly. Creation moves forward. We are never going to go back to your mythical, wonderful time when females ruled everything, a tribal unit, and men were allowed to fight and each other, and oh, it was so perfect. Bullshit. This is cultural Marxism. This is an elitist idea created by feminists. And you're not the first feminist that ever existed. The battle of sexes has been going on for a long time. Now, I'm not saying that a patriarchal society is better. That's not better. But again, it's one of these things, you don't go from this to this and this to this, an endless cycle. This is sick. This is stupid. We never repeat mistakes unless you want to go work in the universe of a dark god and keep banging your head. You know, look at the god of communism. I don't know if that's Karl Marx or Friedrich Engels, or maybe the first communist was a Taoist on the Syrian system. No idea. But whoever invented the idea of one party's going to solve all the problems, let's just give them all the power and make the party the government. That is a very stupid idea. Why? Because if you don't have more than one party, who's going to oppose the party? Oh, but we have elections within the party. Oh, yeah. After the Politburo has already decided who the candidates are. That's not an election, that's an appointment. That's what the U.S. has been doing for quite some time, especially with the presidential level. The president is selected, not elected. Trump was maybe the first exception to that rule in a long while. And it was because he was painted as such a bad guy that Hillary was so sure she would win, she didn't feel like she needed to use the mechanisms of cheating that were used so often in the past to elect total bastards from the establishment. How do you think Bush II won a second term? That stupid? How do you think Obama II ever went over the line after bailing out the big banks and doing exactly what Bush II would have done if he'd gotten a third term? Wake up, folks. While you still can. Stop trying to tear down the past. Throw out the baby with the bathwater. None of these folks was perfect. Washington was the richest landowner in the colonies and owned slaves. Thomas Jefferson was a very enlightened fellow but owned slaves. Ended up having a long-term affair with one of them and raising and having children with them, which he did well by. By the measure of his time, he was a pretty enlightened fellow. Who else do we have here? Teddy Roosevelt. I talk about Teddy quite a bit. He was the first American progressive who nearly won the presidency. He started the American Progressive Party. Did you know that? Over 100 years ago. Look at their platform. Look at how he almost won a second presidency after they wouldn't let him be the candidate of the Republican Party for his second term. That's when he started this third party and nearly won. And that's when the Uniparty got together and killed the first incarnation of progressivism. What happens when you kill something? You don't kill it completely. You make it more militant. And we've got a modern progressive movement that is very militant and selfish and is just this far from being a communist party. Abe Lincoln freed the slaves, right? Oh, wonderful guy, wonderful guy. Oh, but he was such a misogynist. And, well, if you look at his writings, he was one of the ones that thought, okay, we need to end slavery, but let's at least give them a chance to go back to Africa where they belong. This is true. Most of the leaders of that era who hadn't grown up around black people, who hadn't understood that they're just as smart, just as capable as anyone else, thought, you know what, I believe this bullshit that they're some sub-race that is designed to be successful in darkest Africa, and we need to send them back there. This is the way they thought then. We don't think like that anymore. We've been through a civil rights movement. We don't need another one to get uncivil rights. And that's what you're going for right now with neo-feminism, neo-racism, and this identity politics nonsense where you've got to use everybody's correct. Ooh, I want to be called Zit. Zit. If you don't call me Zit, I'm going to sue you for stomping on my rights. Come on. Don't you understand that that is infringing upon free speech? They can call you whatever they want. They can call you a fucking idiot. And you better damn well take it, because if enough people think you're an idiot, you know what? Look in the mirror. You're probably an idiot. This is an idiot. She is an idiot. I'm sorry, this is the truth. Entitled idiots who think they know more than they do, who have simplistic ideas of perfection and are being used by a system that's trying to depopulate the earth so that righteous people can survive. The global elite think that this country, or this world, needs to be reduced in population to maybe 500 million people by a certain deadline that they have in mind. Read up on the Georgia Guidestones. till they were destroyed, that was pretty much the Bible of the globalist elite. Oh, everything would be perfect because we don't believe in God. We don't believe we can solve all these difficult problems with all these stupid people around that won't vote for the policies that we want. So we need to either select the candidates or we need to wipe out the voters, or both, actually, because we're replacing them with technology, and our robots are so much easier to deal with. We just need to have enough of the old ones around so we can farm their organs until we can figure out how to make synthetic organs, and then we won't need them either. This is going on in China. That's why the West has been allied with China since the Nixon-Kissinger dirty deal. They knew eventually that the blackest stuff, the stuff that was going on in Hitler's Germany that Russia and the U.S. inherited, and Britain, those are the three powers that partitioned Germany, right? They each got a portion of the scientists. And they each rehabilitated Nazi scientists and continued most of the programs, the dystopian, sick programs of the Nazis were continued. Oh, but we're going to do it right this time. We're going to do communism right. We're going to do eugenics right. No, it didn't happen, did it? The pharma industry, the agribusiness industry, the media industry, high tech, has been taken over by some really dark people who think they know better than you what's good for this planet. And they're using some other dark people as their PR mouthpieces. Young ladies like these, social media influencers all over the place, little pinks of the Chinese Communist Party, the Hollywood elite that are looked up to by so much of America and other countries that are heavily influenced by America. The new elites of countries that think, oh, if we can get the U.S. and China to knock each other out, then we can step into the void. Yes, India, I'm talking about you. And yes, old players of the great game, Russia, France, Germany, England, I'm talking to you. You got bad guys there too. Don't pretend you don't. You've also got some great countries there. Countries where the people had a certain amount of freedom and you've done a pretty good job, but it's falling apart now, isn't it? Why? Because China and Russia have played on you for 100 years with this communist bullshit, this anti-Western bullshit, this, oh, well, Western, the colonial era, that's the reason there's all this problem, because Europeans are so bad that we need to, make them the enemy. And, what? The Japanese didn't have a colonial empire? Did you know the Chinese had a huge colonial empire at one point? Read about the Admiral Zheng He, who was out conquering the Pacific before the Portuguese even arrived, or just as they were arriving. East versus West is not where it's at. Eastern philosophies, Eastern religions, they're bullshit. I'm telling you the truth. They've got elements of the truth. Karma is a true thing. But the Hindus didn't even realize that Karma was a goddess who was disguising herself, first as an idea, and then as other goddesses. The goddess Athena was Karma in disguise. Many of the goddesses that represented arts or learning were aspects of Karma. Equity was worshipped as a goddess. Fraternity. Egalitarianism was one of the words that came from the concept of karma. Fairness. Fairness does not exist where there is bias, where there is preference. You can end racism, but if you don't, if you institute reverse racism, there's a new bias. And it's getting so bad now that you've got anti-racists calling for segregation again. Oh, we can't have those white kids, those MAGA kids in our schools. We need to go put them on a bus to a FEMA camp and train them there how to be good Americans again. This is what's in the mind of some of these monsters. And you have only to look at, go to your PTA meetings if you're in a deep blue state and see what the fuck is really going on there, what they're teaching your kids, the kind of teachers that are allowed to dominate the agenda of the teaching staff, who aren't allowed to speak their mind, who are told this is the way you need to teach your kids, or you're out. They're not in the in club anymore. And there are so many parents falling for that and falling right into it, because here is one of the things that I have to tell you about. If you were born and raised in the U.S. or any country, and you've only ever seen another country through the lens of being a tourist, you haven't really disconnected from the cultural programming you've been getting all your life. You are a boiled frog. You think you know what's what, but they keep ratcheting it up. And I told you that in the sessions. That's why I really wanted to do the long sessions where I told you about my life, how I got to the point where I can tell you all these things. Two key points there were the times I spent in Germany, when the internet was mostly just a tool for engineers and scientists. And you go to Germany and it's all German TV, German movies, completely disconnected from the U.S. culture for about 3 or 4 years. And during that time, the change in the programming was so extreme, what the fuck is going on here? TV is doing some evil things. And I stopped getting TV, stopped getting cable. We rented movies from then on, because I thought movies were fairly immune. They were still fairly creative. We were still getting a lot of programming from movies, though, as I realized. And my second phase of disconnection from all this, from the programs, was when I lived in China. And I saw the world from the Chinese lie standpoint, the Potemkin country. And I thought it was great at first, because I got to start my own theater company, and I did a bunch of things that were pretty much against the rules where I came from, and nobody seemed to mind. Oh, you got more freedom in China. Well, that's so stupid. Towards the end of my time there, I saw folks that I don't think I worked directly with them in the theater I started, but they were an offshoot of the theater after I took off. I saw them deported or threatened with deporting and told they could never perform anything in China again. I saw some ladies who hadn't been involved in the theater, but they were friends of friends, who started their own dance school in China and did get deported because they wanted their kids to be able to perform ballets and stuff like that, and not just, go through little motion. They want to give a performance for the parents. And they got a lot of students that way because parents liked that. And they didn't teach like the Chinese dance teachers. And the kids got to learn English while they were learning dance, which is multimedia, effectively. They got deported. These two gals that started their own school. How did they get deported? Well, the person who ran the school that they had been teaching on before they went independent was jealous of them. And she had a party contact, and she informed on them, oh, they're giving performances without a license. And they came down hard on them, even though there was nothing threatening about those performances. Nutcracker for 5-year-olds? Is that gonna tear apart your communist utopia? By the time I left China, I I knew the writing was on the wall. I could see what was really going on. And it was because of what I saw going on in the lead up to the Olympics and the Shanghai Expo. As they were preparing for the Shanghai Expo, they closed down completely the street where the bars had been on, where all the Westerners went to pick up whores. The local whorehouses were still open because those mostly had Chinese customers or friends of the party. This is the kind of shit that happens in a one-party system. It becomes a two-tiered system. If you're part of the in-crowd, you can get away with anything. If you're part of the out-crowd, you can get punished for anything. You can get your organs taken away. You can get deported from Shanghai for selling DVDs, bootleg DVDs, when the Han neighbor in the next shop next to you gets warned of the raid and doesn't get deported back to Tibet or Xinjiang or Gansu province. I saw that happen. This is what's happening in America right now. It's becoming a two-tiered system. And people like the Bidens can get away with murder. The Clintons, the Podestas, the Mitch McConnells, the establishment state can literally get away with murder. You're part of the in crowd, the DOJ shoves it under the rug. The FBI frames somebody else. No bad deed goes unpunished. They just punish the wrong people. This is what false flags are all about. Creating an incident, creating an event, or using an event for your own propaganda purposes. Many people believe 9/11 was a false flag. Even if it wasn't, it was used like a false flag. Opportunistically, at least, it certainly appears like to me that a plane did not hit the Pentagon. It looked like a missile hit the Pentagon. And most experts who've looked at the photos would agree that doesn't look like the wreck of a plane. It looks like the damage would be caused by a cruise missile, something like that. Even if the Twin Towers fell as a result of the two planes that hit them, even though they were low on fuel, how does that explain the third tower falling? With what looked like a controlled demolition. People didn't know about these things. And interestingly enough, documentation that was about to be reviewed in an audit of the Fed and an audit of the Pentagon to figure out where so many trillions of dollars had disappeared to. I know exactly where they disappeared to. They were going to Black Ops research in China. This is how China has survived so long, because if you look at their normal import-exports, they should have been out of currency reserves by about 2016. They still are able to somehow buy what they need from the West. Where'd they get those dollars? Fed's got a lot of explaining to do. The Pentagon's got a lot of explaining to do. Why do you think there was an open letter that just came out recently from a bunch of retired top generals, chiefs of staff, joint chiefs of staff, top generals, saying basically that following the Constitution means supporting the current president? They're scared to death of what can come out and what will come out if either the Biden regime is exposed or the Chinese Communist Party falls. Somebody's going to start spilling the beans. They're already spilling the beans. The whole narrative, this whole dark alliance between China and the establishment of the West is falling apart. And it's not everybody that's a bad guy. A lot weren't aware of the depth of things that are going on, but it's coming out now as a result of the pandemic, as a result of the Great Reset. Folks are realizing, whoa, I thought I was just playing for the team that was paying the most money. I didn't know that I was taking on such a hard karma. And those folks are faced with, at least if they understand anything about how karma works, if they believe in reincarnation, if they believe in a God, if they believe in the God that I'm telling you about, they know they better clean up their act. I put out an open letter. I don't know if anybody read it about it. I think it was about 2 years ago now, maybe a year or two, that said basically you better wise up and become a whistleblower, or it's curtains for you after this life. And I'm going to repeat that in the podcast right now. This is the message I'm giving you. You cannot support tyranny, you cannot profiteer, you can't turn a blind eye to what's going on and say, well, there's nothing I can do about it, it's above my head. It's above my pay grade. It's above my rank. Sorry, that doesn't cut it. When you die, and you will, you're not going to get to go to the heaven that you think you will. You can be the best fucking Christian in the world, go to church every weekend. You can be the best Muslim in the world, pray every day and know all your verses backwards and forwards. You can be the best Hindu in the world, you can be the best Buddhist in the world, you can be the best humanist in the world. And if you're willing to look the other way at tyranny, you can see what's going on and have all the cognitive dissonance that you must have if you have your eyes anything but wide shut. Sorry. Nice try. You don't get a spot on the good ship Humanity. Not this one, not in God's universe. Maybe in another one for your particular brand of dummy. Sorry. That's karma. Deal with it. At any rate, I think I've covered what I needed to cover here. I went a little bit long. Like, share, subscribe. I think this is a very important message. And if you want to get a copy of this spreadsheet, if there's anything in it that you didn't quite get, email me, robtromp@yahoo.com, and I will add you to the access list for this. Till then, till my next session, which I don't know when it will be, this is Rob Tromp on this hour.